in one was a first for me then. Uh, Mostly the events, like I told Dr. Leir, that I have precognition with and deja vu'd into, which, were funerals, especially friends and family. Now that I'm kind of about the patriarch of my family, that's kind of that is diminished quite a bit, and I have to wonder about other things. But yeah, I mean, you don't, there's nothing saying this or that, but this was one of them, and I was very aware of the event that was going to transpire probably 5 or 10 minutes even before it happened. A lot of times the things I deja vu into and then realize it and then remember, they'd be kind of right on me. I mean, within 3-4 minutes. But this was quite a while, and I had some interesting thoughts before, and I really can't tell you how it happened. But because it's relevant to you asked me about how come I didn't know if there was an implant in my body. Well, when I rolled this car 5 times, I severely fractured my neck. I cracked a couple cervical vertebrae and imploded one and severely bruised my spinal cord. When the car quit rolling, I was paralyzed in the arms and fell over and took out my appendix on the gear shift.
Oh, wow.
But I knew the guy that was with me wasn't, my friend who was with me who's passed away wasn't hurt. And I knew my legs were working. And he says, "Are you hurt?" I says, "I think I broke my neck. But if you get around here and help me out of this car, we'll get to the top of the ditch and there'll be a station wagon there. It'll take us to town." And when I got up to the top of the ditch, touched the station wagon, then my legs started going. And by the time I got to Yuma, Colorado, I was paralyzed from the neck down.
Well, when a person
Now,
gets...
this is difficult for me because I realize what I'm saying.
But, I just want to say, when a person gets in a major accident, I was hit head on one time.
Wow.
I bought a brand new van. I was so excited.
Okay.
I was coming home to show my wife my brand new van. I mean, it was my first brand new van. And this was probably around 79. And, I almost made it all the way home. And some guy going, the opposite direction somehow veered into my lane. And he hit me, and the state patrol told me that from the amount of damage my van took, he was doing at least 60 miles an hour. And it was the funniest thing, though. I'll say this, Tim. When I got hit, the bolts that hold the seat into the van snapped off. I was still fastened with a seatbelt on the seat, and I was thrown to the back of the van. Thank God, because the whole front of the van was taken out. But as I was tossed in the back, I mean, it seemed like forever. Time stood still. I mean, I just watched the ceiling. I watched the side. I saw myself like floating with the seat till I landed in the back. And then I saw like real slow motion, the front of the van kind of come in, a quarter way inward towards me. Mm-hmm. And it was the strangest sensation. I mean, it seemed like it lasted for minutes when it was maybe a nanosecond.
Milliseconds.
Yeah, it was strange.
I had the same sensation a time there too, and it was, but anyway, after I broke my neck, I have a bone chip that laid on my spine, so it caused me, and still does, cause me some nerve sensation. And so when my arm that had the implant in it, when that nerve would start acting up, we was relating it to nerve damage from my neck instead of the implant that was in my body. Now, I was abducted probably about 6 weeks later, and the implant had to be put in my body then, because when I'm at Denver General, if there was my accident, they don't realize that I shouldn't be paralyzed with what's showing up on X-ray, so they sent me through an MRI to discover the extent of my injuries. So if this highly magnetic implant would have been in my body then, it would have probably at least caused me some discomfort or came on out. So
yeah,
that's how that worked. So I didn't know it, And then, like I said, in 1998, I'd been working, and I'd hit my thumb, and it was bugging me. And my wife, who was a nurse, told me, well, you might be getting arthritis. Maybe you better go get your hand looked at a little bit. And I went up, and this doctor, I won't mention his name, he was a Mormon, though. And when he come and he says, looks at me, he says, you know, you got a piece of metal in your wrist? And I said, no. And he goes, well, you got any idea where it come from? And I said, I'm sitting there, and I mean, hey, aliens had to put it in there, and I knew nothing about anything along them lines. I mean, it was just, you know, one of them things you just seem to learn from somewhere else. And I was going to speak to him then, but he had a student doctor with him, and I told him to make his rounds and come back, and we'll discuss where this piece of metal came from. And when he came back, I talked to him about my experiences, my UFO encounters, of which up to then would have been 3, and you know, some of the other stuff that had happened in my life that, you know, I just didn't blow out to everybody. I mean, it's not been easy. I mean, just like my first 2 UFO encounters were in exactly the same spot, except the second craft was more like a small spray plane. It came across in front of me with a couple double flashing red light, and then I got stopped where I stopped the first time, and then when it moved behind this hill, so I would back up. When it moved sideways, and it was only one red light because my perspective had changed. Well, when I back up on this second sighting, then I back up to my spot thinking, okay, boys, you're messing with my head pretty hard here. Then I backed up, and they stayed behind the hill on me. So I sat there a little bit and said, okay, you've messed with me, I understand. And I really didn't. My talking about UFOs had ceased around my local town here. Of course, I'd been gone and didn't realize that there was quite a bit in the papers and there was stuff about them. So, you know, but I mean, I kind of just, one's bad enough, and 2 is going to be way too dangerous. So I didn't. And then with my third one, which was the most strange craft, it was a strobe light object, which I encountered with my wife and my 3 daughters. And we all get out and watch this thing, and it pops around a little bit for us, and then it meanders off. Well, I'm kind of wondering what it's doing, and I realize that maybe my daughters don't truly realize, you know, they don't realize that their dad's now seen 3 UFOs, and we're having something's happening here more than I can realize. And so then I started talking to them and trying to explain to them. They were in their teens and starting to about my paranormal experiences, and to talk to, you know, those that mean the most to you about something that's really not regular. It was a little scary for me, but I think I've come out. I did the right, you know, of course I did the right thing now that I look back, and that's all there was to it.
Well, especially back at, that's what, in the mid 90s or late 90s?
Yeah, somewhere in there. When I encountered my last craft, it was in 1994, up close.
Well, you know, it's only been probably about the last 10 years, Tim, that people are more open about the paranormal. I mean, when you go back, you know.
Yeah, I see this.
And you can thank Art Bell for that, because, I mean, with his, you know, Coast to Coast and all the shows he put on, I mean, he made paranormal pretty much a household name. People were scared, you know, like... if they seen a UFO, a lot of people wouldn't tell people, because, you know, a lot of people say, oh, I saw a UFO today when I was driving. You know what a lot of people would have thought back in the 90s?
Oh, well, I'll guarantee you.
Yeah, well,
sure.
I'm not going to let you fill my teeth, you know. I don't care if I know you and you're a good dentist. Yeah. You're not going to do it anymore. I mean, a lot of people would be scared to say anything about it. So, you know, I condone you for actually, you know, talking about it, because, I mean, it was important for you to get it out. And I want to think, and I do think, because you had that implant in you, they were kind of monitoring you.
Well, I'll discuss what I think on the implant, but like I said, I'll go back to where, and the doctor found it, you know, and he, you know, and I talked to him about, you know, my experiences and whatever was in, and like I say, got a hold of Dr. Leir to he'd been, that November of 1998, he was on a program on NBC called Confirmation, or Proof of Aliens Amongst Us or something, and it was so-so. I don't think they were too impressed. And but like I said, even with this doctor that we first got on, we was running into things, but the one we ran into the peer group, and they didn't do alien, they didn't remove things from people. They were interested in their experiences, and then, but like I say, then Dr. Leir was on the TV, and they told me that's who it was, and I made some contact then and there, so it was kind of interesting right at that frame of time. And like I said, yeah, it's improved a lot in this century. The first two programs I was on with Dr. Leir, the first one came out in end of March of 2001, which is and it was called The Aliens Have Landed. And the only comment I'll ever say is on it is that I was hoping, and I was a little crushed, and so was my wife. That's the way they really ended up dealing with it. The only one thing they ever said about it that I always admired Dr. Leir for is they said, well, did the surgery, but he had to wasn't even a doctor because he had a lackey do the surgery on me. And they didn't bother to mention that he was a foot and ankle surgeon. He was a doctor. I have a wife and two daughters in the medical field. Now I know what kind of insult that really was. Don't mention that he's a foot and ankle doctor and he wasn't licensed to operate on my wrist in the state of California. But, if it would have been an emergency, he would have been very capable of getting the job done, and it's bull like that. And the other program then would have been The Secret World of Alien Abduction, which they did a much better job of dealing with it. Dr. Irene Pavinko was on and discussed the biological memory that surrounds these metallic objects, and there was quite a bit more information, but still you had the, back then it was always put enough flaw to it where, it's really, if we needed to bunk it a little bit, then it's really not quite spot on, you know what I mean? That was quite a bit through then. I think they're trying to avoid dealing with things a little more so nowadays. They're starting to show up a little bit, but yeah, I remember when it was,
Well, didn't Dr. Leir always make sure when he did the surgery, he had other doctors there with him when he was doing the surgery that,
well, he had another doctor with me, and, there were some people say, but Dr. Leir was very professional, very smart, and did a good job. He put his book out, Aliens and the Scalpel. It's very factual. It's very well done. And people can say whatever they want. I won't, I've heard it all, and I'm pretty disgusted with it, and I could, tell people all about it, but that's really not the point. I'm just saying, it's his book has been out since 20 years now, and anybody else, come on down and give me a better explanation, or if you know the technology, I'm sitting right here. Come on down, and you can put another one in my body. I'm game.
Now, Tim, did you get to see what it looked like? What did it look like?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I got to see it, and I've got some pictures of it.
Can you kind of describe it a little bit?
Well, basically, once they took the biological membrane that encased the metallic object, it looked like a cantaloupe seed.
Wow.
And that's basically it. Well, I'll tell you what, more people maybe even think watermelon seed. A watermelon seed's a little wider than a cantaloupe seed, but the same thing, type of object. Mine was one of 7 that Dr. Leir recovered in his 17 surgeries. The first surgery he done was on a woman, which got him involved because the objects were in her left big toe. And he was a foot surgeon, and they got her out to California, and that's how I got him started. They had another patient come out where they took something out of his hand, but took two deals out of this woman's toe. One of them was a connected set of rods, and the other one was a cantaloupe seed type object like he took out of my body.